Arthur, the concept of prophecy and a sequence of events leading to some cataclysmic transformation, return of the Messiah or the appearance of the Messiah, is a very important aspect of Christianity, as we know. What about in Judaism, which has similar eschatological end-time goals, but is there a sequence of prophetic events that the tradition has looked to see when these things might happen?
Let me begin with part of your question, namely the Christian version of the Messiah. Here there are two claims. First of all, there is a belief in the Messiah. And secondly, the claim is that messianic times have happened with the advent of Jesus. This is an important part of Christianity. Now, on the Jewish end, first of all, there are conditions that have to be fulfilled. And the Jewish claim against Christianity, and this was part of many medieval discussions, was that Jesus cannot be the Messiah because the conditions of the coming of the Messiah have not been fulfilled. Now, on the Jewish end, there is a concept called the War of Gog and Magog, which is a kind of a big cataclysmic war. And the tradition here teaches that before the coming of the Messiah, there must be this kind of war.
Between Gog and Magog.
Between Gog and Magog. These were biblical characters, and that sort of projected into the future. And then after this war, the Messiah will come, and then certain conditions have to be fulfilled. Peace on earth, no sickness, no death, and so on. And the Jewish claim in evaluating Christianity is whatever else Christianity might be, these conditions of the coming of the Messiah have not been fulfilled. Now, if you will look at Jewish history, you will find that there are messianic pretenders almost in every generation, that the people claim they are the Messiah, and the counterclaim always is that the conditions of the Messiah have not been fulfilled. So one important point of Jewish messianism is that the Messiah has not yet come because these conditions have not been fulfilled. Now, the sequence seems to be, first of all, the war of Gog and Magog, then the coming of the Messiah, then the resurrection of the dead, and then the world to come. These episodes are accepted by almost all Jewish theologians and thinkers, even though the fleshing out of the details of these conceptions is subject to varying interpretations.
Let's focus on the beginning, the first part, because once we get into the sequence of the Messiah, I mean, that'll take care of itself. But, that first part, this war between Gog and Magog, what more can we say about it? Certainly, there would be those people today who would look to the Middle East and see or imagine all sorts of things that might develop. Does Jewish thinking take that seriously?
Well, I think Jewish thinking includes all of these things. I'm fully aware that there are people who think of the conflict in the East or the Near East as the beginning of Messianic times, and that people are very verbal about that. But I think the basic Jewish attitude here would be that the whole series of events would have to be fulfilled. And if they're not fulfilled, then the Messiah hasn't come. And this would be always the counter-argument against Messianic claims. Let me just illustrate it by one more example. That Maimonides, the great Jewish philosopher of the Middle Ages, was asked by the Jews of Yemen to comment on a person who claimed to be the Messiah. And he wrote a letter to the Jews of Yemen, so a kind of a polemical letter, the main point of which was that the whole sequence of eschatological events has not happened. I think this would sort of be the Jewish answer. The only way in which we would know that the Messiah has come is if these messianic events that have been stipulated will in fact have happened.
So let's look at that first one, because that first one is a key. This war between Gog and Magog. What can we say? Is there any way to interpret Gog and Magog? How are they different? The names sound the same a little bit.
Well,
I mean, are they different forces or nations or?
Well, there's no clear statement in Jewish tradition who exactly they would be or when it would happen. But I think the attitude here would be that the only way in which you can judge the eschatological event is by the time all of them will have happened. So I think the answer to the people who now claim that what happens in the Near East is a war of Gog and Magog is that let's see in what will happen at the next stage.
Is it possible to differentiate between Gog and Magog? Is one a good guy and one a bad guy, or are they both?
I think they're simply picking up a biblical terminology, and I don't think there's any spelling out exactly who they are or when it will happen or what exactly will happen. You know, as so
does
often,
it have to be a big war?
This is not clear. You know what often happens in these kinds of discussions is you get a certain terminology and a certain conceptual framework, but the details are not spelled out. And I think if you look for any kind of normative Jewish interpretation of these, it would be that simply you would only know by the end of the sequence. You could not tell it while the sequence is going on. So to flesh it out, I think, would be difficult. I think this is the whole problem about eschatological ideas, that there are ideas where the terminology is very clear and sort of the description of what will happen is reasonably clear, but the details are not spelled out. And I think what somebody from a normative Jewish position would say, that we really don't know whether these are the eschatological event until it happened at the end, or it happens at the end.